Hello and welcome to Flory Models Mojo Build. Okay, so last night, or yesterday, I basically asked you, what would you like me to build? And to be honest with you, obviously my stash is a little bit limited these days, but I really was surprised. I actually thought you'd have me rescribing and doing something quite small and technical and everything else like that. So this was the options you could have gone for, and admittedly we're doing a P40 now, but there we go. So we got that, we're not worried about them. The Tempest, to be honest, I know a lot of people have said about it. I'm either going to do the Tempest or the Trojan in a couple of weeks' time anyway, purely because we want to talk about the rescribing side of doing something like that and something quite small. The Interstellar ship, again, that would be quite nice for a one-day build later on. And we are doing this one sort of anyway. Okay, so in some ways, fair enough. But you guys have decided to do this classic, which, to be honest with you, I bought this kit over 10 years ago. In fact, might be a little bit more than that, judging by the dust. This is genuine dust from my stash, and to be honest, it's been brought to my attention this kit goes for a fortune on eBay because it's, you know, the only one in town. But it is the old Panda 144B1 or Bone. I know a couple of you saying you call it a Bone. B1 as in O-N-E, Bone. That's anyway. So yeah, so that's it. So as you can see in the box, it is. I think we actually reviewed this some time ago. When I say some time ago, part of the old show, is again, it's not a great deal to it, but let's face it, it's not the best kit in the world. It's going to take a little bit of fiddling around with and a little bit of playing. Now, because this is a sort of mojo build, I have gone back to really old school. So I'm just using one camera. Okay, so for this as well, to speed up editing time and everything else like that, what I thought we'd do is literally bundle this little guy together on both cams running. You can see exactly how it goes. Okay, and go through the motions of it. But as you can see, there isn't a ton of stuff to it. It is two sprues. And if we get these out, these were the days when I used to review without undoing a bag. Yes, it was a long, long time ago, admittedly. Okay, but we have got, but to be honest with you, one of the really nice things about this kit, and I think why it is so much of a firm favourite, is that the parts are all recessed details. So they're very nice from that point of view. And again, a B1, they are very big. And to be honest with you, there's a rumour going round, which I hate to spread rumours, as clearly you know, but apparently there's a brand new tool, 1/72 one, coming along soon. So be interesting to see if that one does actually materialise. But as you can probably see down in here, and as we just cut a few bits off the sprue just to make things a little bit easier, we can see we've got very large sprue tabs down in here. I'm hoping my cutters can just nip this through without making any damage. In fact, I do it the other way because the pin. So when you're cutting through like this, I always like to use, obviously, good cutters, but obviously just be careful if you're doing plastic this big with expensive cutters. So like your gold standard ones and things like that, for instance, because you could make a little bit of a mess. Okay, now, again, this is one of those things. Our very own Mr. Matt Ball said to me this morning, what the hell are you doing? You know that's going to take a ton of work. So I'm hoping he's wrong, but probably not. He knows these kits probably better than anyone. So I'm just hoping that it's going to go through and be all right. Okay, so what I'm just going to do here is just snip off some of the bigger major parts as we make our way through. Okay. So that's those. The rest of them I think can stay on. So the idea is I can just do a little bit of cleanup with this as we go through this one. Okay. So what I thought we could also do is perhaps answer a few questions on this one. Okay. So again, it's not going to have a big close-up cam on this. It's more going to be sort of overalls, as you can sort of see it here on the side, than going in and doing the big stuff. So what I'm planning on doing literally is throwing this together as fast as possible. Okay, and then what we'll do in the next show, we'll actually paint it and go through the motions of weathering it. Again, I think one of the nice things with this particular model of doing it is that we can show about the scale effect in these 144 scale bombers, because obviously if you're doing it into like a Spitfire in this scale, it's like, Jesus, that's so difficult to show, you know, when the entire plane is probably no bigger than this sort of, you know, tailplane here. You can't really show it on camera. So when you're doing the bigger stuff like this, we can get amongst it all and we can show off all these nice details. So we're just going to need the doors or the splitters for the intakes. So we're going to need those off of here, and we might need your bulkhead. And is that the flight deck? Does it have seats? It does even have seats, which is a miracle. So we do have a couple of seats. It even has a boarding ladder. To be honest with you, when I pulled this out of the stash, I was thinking, yeah, okay, we're, you know, it's an option. I wasn't thinking you guys were just going to grab it or anything else like that, but actually, it's something quite nice. So what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to do a little bit of parts cleanup, sand off the edges, stuff like that. Go through the motions of getting these bits together, and then we can think about actually just getting it in there. The whole point of getting this thing is to get it together fast. Then we can look at obviously filling, rescribing, all those good things like that. So join me in a second when I'm a bit more further ahead. Okay, so we're making our way around just cleaning up the things. First point to make out is that when you're taking off sprue tabs and various things like that, obviously a good pair of cutters really does help. And for years I used a pair of orange scissors. In fact, they're still here. And I still use them all the time, but actually I sort of saw the light. These are the Icon to Spain cutters. They're really nice. They're from these people, and it comes in a very nice box. Shameless plug, I know. No, I don't sell them before everyone starts having a go. But yeah, so you can get hold of those, but anything like God's Hands cutters, stuff like that, because the cut you make is a lot closer, it's cleaner, and it's not chewing the plastic. A lot of the trouble you can have if you're using normal cutters, and to be honest, we've still got them, various different ones down in here. But if you're talking about using perhaps these, and to be honest, these are really nice. This is the Tamiya cutters you can see here. The trouble is, because it's equal pressure both sides, as it comes in, it's a V, okay? So actually, as it's coming in, it's causing pressure, which is pulling it up. So it physically rips the part off of the sprue, if you like, or off the tab. That then can cause a tiny little hole in your plastic. Now the trouble is though, if you cause the trouble, you know, with the plastic in there, when you come to things like glue, it's got a void and it tends to get in amongst it, and you end up with a depression. And then when you put two halves together, you've got that little void. You end up sanding it, perhaps you sand a little bit too far, and then before you know it, you've got a hole and you're gonna have to fill it, and so forth and so on. Okay, so when you're coming along, yeah, a good example we can show you is this one here. We've got this little guy down in here. So what happens is, if you use a good quality sander, a shameless plug I know as well, but to be honest, you know this is one of my dual range, which I use all the time. If you place it onto it, all right, let the sander do the work. Don't start pushing into it. Also, if you're doing quite a large tab like this, don't think about using a skinny, because the trouble is with a skinny, you're going to come in, you'll take out that tab perfectly, but you also might go a little bit too far and end up with a depression or a little nick out of that. So by having a bigger one, just laying it over the top of it, and then literally just rub. As you can see, I'm only taking this here. I'm not doing the sides of it because you're not pushing down. If you start to push down, you're going to end up doing a sanding thing this wide. But if you keep on top of it, you can just see, and every now and again I just come to the edge, you can see exactly how far you need to go. Okay, and then once you're pretty much down there, you can feel you're basically smooth. You can just flip over then to the sponge side and give it a rub. And that way it's totally smooth and you've taken out that mark. Same goes for like this one just down in here. We've got a little bit of depression here. So again, it's on a curve as well. So we're just very lightly rubbing over to sort of take out that curved section. Then we just come in with a sponge, and the sponge, you know, technically just cleans that entire section out. We've still got a little bit of a depression down in there. So we're just gonna go over it again. Okay, and then just in your sponge. And then we're feeling it and it's smooth. Same with this one down in here. Let's see, to start with, we just go, we get rid of it all, and then just in with the sponge to get rid of the scratching. And that's why I like the dual one, because you just go one side to the other, all the way around, and you're good to go. So again, we've got another one just down in here. Okay, so we're just gonna sand that out of the way. And then obviously with this little guy, you end up with a perfect finish right the way through. Okay, and we've already done just down in here. You can see there's not even a mark left after that one. That was a really nice job. So we just got this little one down in here. But again, don't push. Too many people push and you more cause damage. And obviously the thing is, if you push down, obviously you've got recessed details all over this. If you're going to obliterate them, if you go very lightly, you can still see them all. Okay, so we've just got a couple more just down on here to take care of. Okay, so we just stand that out. Round, still a little tiny bit there. Okay, and we've just literally just been around everywhere, all these parts, and we've taken them off. But again, I can't stress enough about not pushing down and also using the correct sander. If you use a slightly wider sander than you do the skinny, you've got the skinny here, it does exactly the same thing, but if you're in here, sometimes you can actually make a little chunk out of it, and that's just something that's going to cause you trouble, because you've got to come back at some point and fill it. Don't get me wrong, you can do some very precise stuff with it. So if you've got down in here and you just want to get in there, it's a little bit more, but again, don't push. Sanders are designed to do all the work for you. Okay, and you can just take them out just like that. And then this guy down here, a little bit bigger. Okay, and we'll just come in, take out all the scratches. Because the blue side, you probably see, it's designed literally to take out all the stuff from here. They're designed to work together. So consequently, as I knock him out, you can see these all self-clean, but this guy here is physically designed to do all the work. This one is designed to get rid of all the marks this one makes. They work in conjunction with each other. And to be honest, the medium, this is the dual sander medium, is the one that I use pretty much all the time. You know, it's a great sander. It works pretty much with everybody's plastic. Haven't seen a problem with it at all. So we've just got his last one up here. Okay, so we're just going to sand him out, have a feel. If it's looking feeling quite smooth, then obviously you can come back in, fluff him up, and you're in and good to go. Okay, so it's absolutely fine. So we've done all the other parts literally just down in here. So looking at our instructions, step one would have you do the cockpit. Now the cockpit, we're going to not see anything really in here. So what I'm going to do is literally just put it together, okay, and then we're going to paint it all black, a quick bit of dry brushing over it, and we're good to go. You're never going to see the instrument panel because it's down the wrong side of this, but if you wanted to, you could pop it in. It actually doesn't look too bad for its thing. There it is. It's just this little guy here. So what I'm probably going to do is just do internal grey into this one, a little bit of black at the front. We can get that cockpit put up and in there. We've already done the wings, so we've gone in here and we've cleaned these little guys up as well. Very straightforward. In fact, I've missed one. I haven't done this one even, so we can just grab this. And again, if you're doing a wing as well, flat to it, very lightly, just rocking back and forth, and there it goes, it's gone. Okay, again, avoid this thing of coming in across it, because you can use the rest of it to give you that right height. And then obviously we're just going to pop along here, this little guy down in here. Okay, and it's all that thing about minimal damage. So the less damage you can make during sanding and that type of thing means the less you've got to do with filling and rescribing afterwards, because obviously we still need to put these points in the front here, but because we can still see where the panel lines is, it's going to be very easy just to come along with a knife and pop all those back in. Other areas, doesn't really matter. Up here you're not going to see it, it's going to be in the wing fold, so we can just take him out so we've got a nice smooth join. Same with this guy on here. Just a quick tidy. And this one back here. Clean all those points up. We've got one at the tip as well. But again, sanding should be one of those things. It's in preparation for everything as you make your way through. And that's all we're trying to do on this one. Okay, so there we go. So basically, sanding, tidying up, cleaning up, everything else like that, make as little work as you have to do. It will save you down the line, because again, it saves you fillers and all those different things. Also, making sure those sprue tabs are all completely off and clean and flush makes a better alignment. So little things you have to think about is like on here, you can probably see we've got this little white mark just on the surface. So just come along very lightly, again, don't pushing down, just smooth these guys out. And then that way, when the two halves come together, you won't have a small little step in this section just down on here. In fact, I've got to do this guy, I haven't done this one either. There's so many on this kit. Okay, but again, once you've sanded down the outside area, just make sure you do these tops where they were, and then that way just a swipe or two just to clean up anything they've had. If you're doing this side with the actual locating tabs, it's easy. If you're doing the actual male side on here with them actually sticking out, just be a little bit mindful of those. But again, just laying it down there, not sanding heavy. And again, you don't want to be coming in with one of these, because if you do it this way, you're going to end up with a dip and it's going to make a filler job, so forth and so on. So remember, you know, sand smart, think about what you're going to be doing a little bit later on. Okay, so what we can do is just pop this guy together just to see what's going on and how much filler this is really going to take, because again, I've heard horror stories about this kit and they may be coming true. Hold on, We can even get these to line up. Yeah, we're going to have fun in here, I think. See, again, we have got a little dip all the way down in here, and that's something we'll talk about, obviously getting that one done and put together, but it's actually, yeah, it's going to be a little bit of work down in here. So what we're going to end up doing is probably coming in here with filler, and then obviously we'll rescribe and take care of some details and put everything back into it just like that. Right, so next up for me, we're going to get this cockpit put together. We're going to pop the seats into it, glue them down, paint it all up, get it installed into the top of this little guy as well, because what we're going to need to do is think about getting the glass in quite early for the clear parts, purely because we're going to have filler jobs and everything round in there, and we might need to come in with some weld actions and stuff like that. Okay, so we're moving along. Got lots of bits and pieces on the go because we're just trying to speed up the build process. So start down in here. We've got the bulkheads in. As you can see, we've got the bulkheads. So we've got two and a mid one down the back here. They're installed and glued in. Okay. The engine nacelles, to be honest, we've done those. They are not a nice fit at all. So we've had to cram them in as best we can. You've basically got some blades down in there for directing the airflow. They just, well, lining them up is a little bit hit and miss. Okay, so I think we've missed. So what we've actually done is come out with the clamps, and obviously we've locked these in. We've welded them up with a little bit of styrene filler. To be honest with you, we'll talk about that when we get to it. We've also done the tail, same thing, got some styrene filler on the go there because that's not nice either. Okay, and last up we've painted the cockpit. So again, we've just done grey, interior grey with the black call out. There's not much down in here, and in here we have an instrument panel, weirdly enough. So we'll just sit this in for probably the most useless bit you're going to find in here, but it's in there, so at least you'll know it's there, even if nobody else is going to see it. Okay, so that sits in there literally just like that. To be honest, it's not a brilliant fit either, but it is in there, and there we go, it sits in there. All right, so we just come in and suck up some of the water off the bottom here. And then what we'll do is we'll pop a little bit of thinners on there when that's dried in a little bit, just to weld that down in place. Same time I did spray grey up in here as well, so when that comes in, because this is actually obviously going to sandwich up in here like this, we'll be good to go. All right, so what we're going to do, I'm just going to let these bits glue in, get those together and everything else. We'll get that decal system sat in there. Okay, I'm wondering actually if we can just pop this in now. Taking a bit of a jaunt, but hey, no risk, no reward. And see how well this is going to fit into this section. Actually, I don't think it's too bad for something you can't see anything whatsoever in there. So actually what we're going to do is glue that in. So just a little bit of glue just around the outside of that one. Sitting it in square, and then the sides, we're not sure how much those need to pinch or need to go in, so if I just glue in the bottom bit down there, that should be quite good. Okay, we're just going to nudge it in forward, just again spot glue each side of the bulkhead, just to help sit that in just a little bit. We might end up just coming around with glue over the top. We've got the canopy system which is going to fit in there, which again we will see just how good that is very, very shortly. Okay, so next up we've actually got just down in here the the wing movements, which are, where's the wingy bits? That must be these in here. So again, this is a little bit gimmicky, shall we say, and I don't know if we're going to be going with it. Sorry, I was actually looking for the wing poller. This must be the ones for the overwing sections. Okay, 1 and 2. And there's that one. But it might just help with alignment by putting this one in. Okay, and by alignment we mean just so obviously the wings are both facing in the right degrees of sweep or forward if these are all hipped together. Okay, so we'll just snap these out the way. On this guy and around here. Okay, where's my... Quick clean up with these. Again, if we can get this one all together very nicely, and then tomorrow we can actually just get this thing into paint, so forth and so on. Again, it's not going to take too much in paint, but we've got to think of the scale effect of how it's actually all going to go down. Alright, so these are these undersections. So what happens is, one would assume they are going to come in, there is a left and right, it's just going to go underneath and it's going to wedge in between the two, which is fair enough. Okay, so sweep point is, so we're going to nick out of one, which end has the nick out of. The nick out will go for this one, and it's going to be on the sweep forward. Okay, that one's in, and then generous dollop of glue, but obviously not near the wing fold section, and then we don't want to touch it by hand because otherwise we'll make a gluey print, so we're just making sure that is in. Okay, so the actual mechanism is free. Okay, so that's that one on there. So let's just make sure we are all good and we've got them all down the right way. So that one can go in as well. There's only one pin on one side. Again, weird how that pin is, because you might notice on this one the pin is backed off to the rear point, so it's not actually with the other one. It just seems a bit odd, but there you go, do as you're told. Okay, a bit of glue because we've got an ejector pin port just down in there, so we're making sure that's taken care of and it's all in, and then I'll see this one comes over. Again, it just looks like it's off in the wrong place. We'll see. If it is, we're going to end up with plan B and we'll put it in by hand afterwards. Okay, there's that ejector pin just welding down into that. So there we go, that's happy. And then this little guy is going to come up onto here. And the reason you've got that small cut out is to allow it to go past this corner. So in theory, there we go, it does work. Okay, so that's those two in like that. We're just making sure we've got a couple of the caps which are going to go off and hold that wing in, but again, if we can get away with it, we won't glue these because obviously we want them just to be able to sweep. If you add glue, especially with extra thin, it has a nasty habit of capillary action tracking to just where you don't want it. Normally underneath your finger, or failing that, it is on top. That is going to be a problem because it's right where we don't want it. But we should be able to glue the internal collar like that without affecting the wing. So again, we're just going to pop some glue in that way. And then that way it won't affect the sweep. Just like that. Okay, happy with how that is going in. The rest of it I assume we can all do from the outside. So then again, we've got this situation where this step on this guy here steps across this. So this is what we're on about with that entire alignment system. So I'm wondering, that doesn't look like it lines up, which is always a clue. Because when you align it, you might notice the front is well out. So what we're going to do, we're going to start at the rear, I think, and work forward. So that's the back in. And then we're going to go up to the front. And yeah, lo and behold, as we thought, the rear doesn't fit. Oh, perhaps we can get away with it. Let's grab a couple of pegs just to get this roughly into place. So again, it's a little bit of a handful, this all coming together. So we're just going to pop it in that way. And then again, there we go, that's in there now. That's in, so we need good old fashioned, old way of doing it is pegs. So what we're going to do is just pop the pegs in, just like that. Again, if this wasn't a quick one day sort of build, we would put in or fabricate something in there. because it just doesn't look right, does it? It needs something in there. Okay, this rear section is where we'll start. So okay, we're just going to come in extra thin, let it go in. Okay, and again, remember with extra thin, let it do the work. Okay, don't start flooding around, because all you're going to do is lengthen the drying time. So make it quite sparse to start with, and then once you get going, you can increase the amount of glue once it's gone off. But if you put too much in, just like airbrushing, it will literally take forever to dry, even if you're using the quick set glue and things like that. Okay, so I'm just holding it to get a better seam on here, and then what we'll do is we'll remove the pegs once it's starting its drying process into slightly better locations, just to make that in a little bit more. And actually, considering I was told this is horrible, actually I don't think it's too bad. We are going to need filler, we are going to need to make a little bit of rescribing, all these different things on this, but actually I think we're okay. It's going to work. Okay, push me pull me trick. Okay, so that one's in, and then as we make our way down the back here, unusual thing, if you've got a situation like in here and you've got a small gap going on, don't use your fingers because the glue will go everywhere. Use a pair of scissors and just pull them together. Don't cut it, but all we're doing is just pulling it together so the glue can get in there and bite. Just along there. And what we'll do is we'll get those spring-loaded clamps just to hold that area. And if we've got one more peg, just swap that one there for that one there. So there we go, we're just going to leave that upside down, so that's quite nice. The tail, very straightforward, because that's going to be a drop-in on top. I imagine it's going to be filler, but these as well, you've actually got, these are squared. So you're only going to get minimal travel with these, but because of obviously weathering and scribing and all these different things like that, we're going to leave those off, but they are going to need a little bit of work because they're a little bit wobbly. Okay, and the same with this guy, we're going to get this fitted in as soon as that's dry. As soon as that starts to dry off, we can get that in case we have to maneuver it and pull it round and everything else like that. Once it's in there, we'll be absolutely fine. So what we're going to do, going to wait 10 minutes just for this start to go off. We'll get the tail stuck on board. Okay, we can think about getting these engines as well put in there, get the nose on there, and then that way we can actually get the filler into the filler, can get going and drying and doing its bits and pieces and everything else like that. We are going to be using the plastic weld glue purely because I think if we use the other one at this scale, it's going to be too big and too gritty. We can polish this and put this down just like plastic, and it will make rescribing on a smaller scale a lot easier than it would be if you were going to be going in through soft putty, because that would just make a trench. Okay, so just thinking ahead to how to tidy this up and everything. But generally, it's looking really nice. Right, we have just come back because, to be honest, I've just been doing all the orders in units. So we are coming along quite nicely. So before we went, we were obviously talking about putting things on. Tail is on. To be honest with you, it is a dismal fit. So we've been in there quite heavily with the filler, and to be honest, this is just to weld it up. Then we'll go in there with a little bit something lighter shortly. We're using the styrene filler. I will link the video to how to make this stuff. Basically, it's extra thin glue with styrene melted into it. Don't use sprue, use styrene sheet. We spoke about it. It's all in there. You can go off, but I will link it down below so you can see it. We have got a couple of problems. We've got a nasty joint along here. This is one of those ones where I was hoping we might be able to pull it in a little bit just to fix it in. It hasn't really come off. We're okay on this side. So you've got two options. You can come in then with a styrene filler just along here to take care of that as we did the front, or you might think about traditional fillers as well. But again, because we're talking very fine scribing, I'm probably going to go in with something a little bit more like this. So down in here we have two types. I've got a really thick one and we've got quite a thin watery one. Okay, so the thing is, it's finding which one works best. Tend to use the thick one only if it's needed, because the thick one, gap capability. If you've got a big gap like we had at the back, to be honest, then you want the big thick one in there. But if you're just talking about polishing out and then we can sand into it, you really want a thinner one, purely because it takes forever to dry. So all we're going to do then is just coming along now with this, and you want to put a generous amount, probably not that generous admittedly, sorry, I've got a full one here. Okay, but we're just trying to take that all the way over. Now, don't think this is the silver bullet. This isn't the magic bullet. It's not unicorn stuff. This will still shrink, and all the other stuff that you have problems with fillers, okay? But what it should do, though, is smooth. And when we come in and actually we try and then blend this, it should give a very nice, smooth way. It's not like your standard fillers which come along. That's why we're just slightly putting it on the south side, because that is where the step is. So we're just going to come along, and the great thing as well with this, as you can probably see, this self-levels. So it's going to be minimal cleanup to actually take care of this. This is going to take probably about an hour to dry. That's the slight downside to it before it's workable. The trouble that you have to have, and it's one of the biggest troubles you can have with this, is heat. What happens is, as this dries off and goes cold, it goes hard. Then you come in with a sander and then you sand it. The trouble with this, it generates friction. Obviously you're going to get heat. It then softens the actual plastic now and your filler, because technically it's a plastic, and then it can move, okay? Two ways to get around that. First of all is use a coarser than you would think sanding stick. Now, a lot of this is that people often say about, you know, our coarse sanders and stuff like that. And we've got ones around in here. We've got the newish one. You can see it looks very coarse. The idea being is, though, you get rid of the waste material as fast as possible without generating heat. If you come in with something like this one, which is like 1200 grit, you put it down there. It's great for finishing off and getting rid of scratches and preparing an area, but for sanding work, generates a lot of heat. Okay, there's a lot of surface area being dealt with, and what you're doing really is sort of polishing it. It makes heat, and then you can soften joints, and that's when you can find you get the sink marks as well. We often talk about ghost shadowing, okay? Ghost shadowing is literally where the filler continues to dry, or your glue, and in our case using liquid glues, weld action glues, it shrinks, okay? That's that thing. As it cools down, it shrinks back, pulls in, so what looks like a perfect finish can be great. You put it into primer, you come back a couple of days, when it's totally gone off and it's shrunk back, you get a small dip, and I call them ghost shadows, okay? Then obviously you've got to get back in there with your filler and go through okay? One of the things that stops that happening is heat, okay? By not having as much heat into the plastic, it doesn't shrink as much once it goes in. But as you can see, that's the general area for that one, so that's going off down there as well. We're going to do exactly the same on this one. We don't need quite as much in this area, luckily. So again, we're putting it onto the south side or the lower side, because that's where the step is. So we're not going over too much. We are obviously just a little bit, but really it's all about backfilling this south side of that, and then again we can just come in and then we'll sand up against it and we'll get rid of it, okay? And as you can probably see down in here, we've got a hole appeared, okay, where this is starting to go off. So what we're going to do now, this has been on here a little while, we're coming in with a thinner glue, and again this will self-level, okay, and it should fill in all the very small gaps. The one thing you'll remember is give it a poke to get the air out of it, because obviously you get an air pocket stuck in there. You can go, but you can see that self levels, get the glare off of it, and comes in something a lot nicer. All right, and then again we'll just flip this over, and we're just going to do exactly the same on the other side. So okay, a generous blob, and again, because it's self-leveling, you want to sort of store this so it can level itself out. So if that means hanging it upside down or whatever you want to do with it, you can, okay? Because this has got a lot more thinners in it, as in glue, it will evaporate. Okay. And there we go, that's those taking part on there, and the area there is. Other thing as well, you might notice we've got the glass work in, simple job, and I have to say, a really nice fit. That actually went in there very nicely. So we just pushed that in, and again, we've masked it up by hand, just put some tape on it and went around the normal way of doing that one. So what we're gonna do now is actually leave this just for a little bit. I can go off and edit this for today's show, okay, and we can let this dry off just for a bit. In about an hour, I'll come back, it'll be handleable, we can get those engine nacelles put onto it, we can get those in, but again, these have got filler on, so these can be drying off now. So I'm hoping that these aren't too bad at all. You can see you've got the filler in there. They can be dry, because obviously I want to ideally sand those off. Little for you. Let me just put that down so we're good. Clamps. So what we've done here, we had a real bite problem with getting these together. So obviously this on here isn't enough. So what you can do is you can place in your clamp like this, then come along with a peg one on the other side. That increases the pressure, but also holds it both ways. So if you want to double up your pressure onto it, you can do that. Okay, but there we go. That's those engine nacelles. They are getting difficult to hold this. This is the trouble. Gonna come along, gonna go underneath this and give this as our proper B1 look then. But again, these need to be sorted out. So we will sort that out now. We're gonna pop that upside down so it can dry. But again, you can see in here, it's gonna need a sanding off job. So what we'll do, again, using the big one, just to take the edge off of it. Again, not trying to generate too much heat in there, but we can have a look to see what we're going on. But you can see it gets in there very, very quickly using a stronger grit. That's nice. And then we'll put back all this detail we're losing. Okay. But there we go, you get the idea of that one as well. Okay, so we're going to get those done, sorted out just like that. Okay, and then we'll be back to see how we're getting on. Okay, so we're at that point. Yeah, the filler's out, the sanding has started, multiple coats of filler. Again, this is one of those things. Often I'm asked a lot of the time is like, when do you know when to fill and when you know when to sand? Okay, my point being is that you slightly sand if you're not getting anywhere and you're not, you know, just going slightly into it, you need to fill. So I'll probably just sand a couple of strokes, see what's going on. If it's too deep, then yeah, you're gonna have to hit it with the filler. Also, it's all about in some of the areas, what is the easiest area to get into? Is it a particularly easier one? Various things like that. And that's when I use different types of fillers. Styrene filler I think is great for rescribing. It's a classic example we can do here. This is those troublesome engine nacelles we had on the side, and if I give them a small rub, you can see we've put in the panel lines back in. Very, very faint ones though, that's the thing. We don't want to go heavy, and the way we've done that is to actually use a blade, okay, and not the scribe. Okay, so the great thing about this is it's a very difficult one. It's very difficult to put this down and to scribe onto it, purely because trying to get the right angles and all the rest of it. But these are cheats. All you do is put the blade part on, look where the other half is, and then just rotate it around, and you can actually put it back in. And that works the same for everywhere. Okay, you just line up and then just push it all the way around, and you can actually put the panel lines back in. And these will be slightly recessed. Obviously they're not going to be as full on as it would be if you were doing it, but in this scale it will work particularly well. Okay, so you just pop those in there like that, and away you go. Okay, so again we're just going to come in here and we're looking for the other side. We see it, and then just push it right the way around. Again, put it in, find the other end, line up with it, and then just push it right the way through. And again, you can go over it a couple of times just to make it a little bit deeper. Then if you want to, now you've got a line in there, you could rescribe it, but to be honest, because these are so fine, I don't think my scribing is going to be fine enough to keep up with it. So a quick push like this one, I think, will be more than sufficient. Okay, and that way we just put them all around there just like that. That will go exactly the same for in here. So for instance, we've got some panel lines under here. They're a little bit tricky to see, admittedly, because we've sanded it quite heavily. And we can just then push these all the way around. So you just locate it, drop it in the blade line, see it, and rotate it round. See it, and rotate it round. Last one, see it, and rotate it round. Okay, and that's those all put in there on that leading edge. Again, could be quite a difficult area to do because obviously you're falling off it all the time. The other thing as well is that if you are doing a lot of sanding work like we're doing here, don't be frightened to every now and again just pop in and re-put in the panel line. That way you haven't totally lost it all, but you can hear it clicking and dropping into that panel line, and when it drops in, you know you're in there, and you can just follow it around and put those all back in there like that. If I give it a little bit of rub with the sander, you should see, there we go, we've put those all back there just like that, and then these, there we go, all back there just like that. Very, very nice, very straightforward. And again, the same with these, you just give them a light rub just to see where they are and to make sure you're all in and you're happy how they are. Okay, so again, these aren't exactly the best lines under here, but they're close enough. So what we're going to do is just line up these engine nacelles, and we can put these in and glue these into place. Now these are a little bit troublesome how these go in. They just sort of hang in a hole. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use a blob of the styrene filler, which is going to duplicate up as our glue this time. So we can just pop that in there, one in there, bit of a nudge, and then that will glue that into place. Okay, and then we can just do the same on the other one. So again, a little blob there, a little blob there. Okay. Put those in place. Okay, and we've got something looking very much like a B1 now, really starting to take shape. Alright, but again, we've got a little bit of work still to do down in here. This needs time to go off, and also we've got a little bit of blending work just to do down on the front here, so this is slowing me down quite a bit. This is still very wet on the end, but hopefully you can see that join is coming in there really nicely. But anyway, back to that question, what filler to use and when? If it's a weld job and I want to rescribe over it, styrene filler every single time, because it is just so easy to rescribe over. You don't get that thing where you fall into it if it's a soft putty and things like that. Okay, if it's somewhere quite complex, which I'm going to have trouble getting to, all right, so if it's in somewhere like a wing root or inside an intake or anywhere other side like that, I do like to use the Perfect Plastic Putty. This is the water-based one. The great thing about that is that you can actually just come along with a wet cotton bud, rub it over it, and it will basically almost dissolve into it. It's almost like sanding, but with just a wet cloth, and you can do it. Secret to that one is to totally let it dry before you come in and go through the motions of trying to remove it. Okay, it's a little bit like using the clay wash. If you try and do it wet, all it does is pull it out of the panel line or out of your hole or what you're trying to fill without doing its job. If you let it totally dry off in there, you can come along, take it off, and then don't get me wrong, afterwards you come in with sanders and stuff like that, but it's a great way of not damaging any panel lines or anything else like that. But as you can see, this is really coming along very nicely now. She is definitely looking the part. Unfortunately, I'm not quite as ahead as I wanted to. I wanted to get this one in and on its gear and everything else like that. And then the next show is literally paint, weather, final stages of putting together everything else like that. But I think, you know, you think the time now is 3 o'clock. I'm gonna have to go off and edit all of this and stuff, and also got to do the post run and things, so I've run out of time for today. But it has been a lot of fun to put something like this together. We're still going to do loads to this, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to carry on off camera tonight, and I'll finish just rescribing, taking care of these side parts and everything. So tomorrow when we come in, this thing is all actually just ready for paint, primer, go through the motions of it as well. The other thing for that, we're going to be using Hatagawa paints, or Hataka paints, or whichever way you want to pronounce it. We're going to go with those onto this one as well. Haven't used them, this particular colours before. Going to have a go with their own thinners. So again, a couple of first. We're doing this as a test to see what they're like, see if they're any good as we make our way and put our way through it. But there we go. Hope you've enjoyed today. Something a little bit different, just playing with ideas like we were saying before, and definitely one for me to get my mojo back, because I've actually thoroughly enjoyed putting this together. But fear not, the P40 is sat next to me down in here. To be honest, one of the little parcels arrived me today. It's something to do with that as well, and you'll find out more about that on Wednesday. So till tomorrow everybody, happy modelling, take care.